Ground Live. My name's Harriet Festing, and I'm director of Higher Ground, which is the largest flood survivor network in the US. And I'm joined by Queen Quet, who is chieftess of the Gullah Geechee Nation, also an author, preservationist, performance artist, and founder of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, which we're very grateful to you is a member of Higher Ground. And indeed, you are on the Higher Ground Council. So thank you so much for joining me for this 30 minutes of questions. Before we go into the questions, I just want to remind anybody who's watching this right now that if your community is impacted by flooding, we are a network for communities who are seeking solutions. So do join the Higher Ground Facebook group and then join the network. Reach out to me and I can work with you. So, Queen Quet, let's start by if you could tell people a little bit more about the Gullah Geechee people and the threats of flooding, which is the sort of the thing that in particular unites us.
Well, first, let me say thank you, and thing like that. It's so glad for dear Harriet and see her again and thing like that. So I definitely didn't want to start off without greeting you, of course, in our own language here. And many people who are viewing this, they may not even be familiar with where we are. So to really understand, I like to say the geography and why flooding is an impact here is we live on islands called the Sea Islands. And that chain of islands goes from Jacksonville, North Carolina, down to Jacksonville, Florida. So I literally live in the Atlantic Ocean. And so as a native Gullah Geechee person, I've seen throughout my life differences in the fluctuation of how water ought to work in terms of human life, in the sense that, of course, we all expect rain at times and we all expect, the tide to come and go when you're island people, but you don't expect the tide to begin to come in and take out massive amounts of trees with it, for instance. We started seeing over the last couple of decades that suddenly you go to shoreline areas and you would literally see the trees laying down. But when we mentioned this to the so-called elected officials, they just looked like, no big deal. And were like, there shouldn't be hundreds of trees laying down, and this still meant nothing. And we saw this increasing the more the overbuilding was happening along our shores, because the Sea Islands are a tourist destination. So even in the midst of COVID-19, we have tourists wanting to run here. We have beach areas wanting to close off so people don't run here and increase cases. So we have all of that. So there's a flood in that regard. There's been flooding in regard to hurricanes. Hurricane season normally starts June 1st. They're telling us this weekend there's likely to be the first of what looks like a storm developing off the southeastern coast. So we've dealt with that. But then here comes the term sea level rise, which meant nothing to us as islanders because the sea rises and falls daily. So what do you mean by sea level rise? We know the sea level rises. So there was no logic to this statement to us. And then gradually, from engaging with groups like the Anthropocene Alliance, engaging with the National Adaptation Forum, other groups like that, I started realizing, oh, that's the language these scientists are speaking. They don't mean our normal tide coming and going. They mean when it comes in, it's coming in at a higher level than it used to. And I remind people, though, islands disappear and islands get reformed. So actually, where I live in South Carolina and where my family is from, if you go to the South Carolina Aquarium, there's a kiosk that shows you're standing here. There's a star there. And then it flips. And you see that you're standing where there used to be water. And then it goes all the way inland is where the land was. So at some point, God had it, the water went down enough that created these things called islands, but now it's like the water's coming back. And part of it, we believe, is the climate change dynamic. And so we have been cursed and blessed in a way with COVID-19 in the sense that, of course, we don't want all these people dying, but we also were blessed that the earth stopped dying. So it's kind of a balancing act when we're looking at flooding. So now in the midst of it, and you know very well, Harriet, you've seen our pictures we posted where Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook, you've seen the pictures of my field. So this was planting season, and all of a sudden we got these massive thunderstorms back to back. Fortunately, we didn't have any tornadoes on our island, but there were tornadoes that touched down on other islands north of us in Charleston County and things like that. But they brought all this rain that flooded our fields. So a lot of people had to replant fields now. God willing, they have seeds, and we don't have these so-called storms they're talking about before harvest season. So, of course, flooding is sea level rise. It's too much rain. It's all this. We went from extreme drought to extreme rain. Right. And so it became fighting one issue, switch gears, fight the other issue. So it's hard to say fight the issue when it's nature, right? And so higher ground really has a very big job to get us all above ground with these flooding issues and trying to stop this fill and build, which I think has negatively impacted us a great deal and caused a lot of the problems that I'm mentioning.
Right. So right now you have a GoFundMe campaign. Tell me a little bit more about the circumstances. I mean, of course, everybody wants funding, but you were pointing out some issues that were particularly critical right now to the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition and to the Gullah Geechees. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. On GoFundMe, there is the Gullah Geechee Land Legacy Fund fundraiser. And we have had this fundraiser going on for a couple of years to try to actually build essentially the funds for legal endowment, because we are constantly having to fight cases in court to save our land and to be able to keep our culture alive here on the Sea Islands. So as I referenced a little while ago, in the midst of COVID-19, everything stopped, as most people know. So this being a tourist industry, that is where many Gullah Geechees get the money to be able to pay their land taxes to remain on their land annually. And we cannot do that now because as soon as the major tourist season was beginning, was also when planting season was beginning, and here came the storms I referenced, and then here came the shutdowns. And so people had not recovered yet from paying off Christmas bills, much less, and then land taxes that had been due January the 15th, and then here came this. In the midst of it, we still are having to fight cases. We have a legal case out there still trying to prevent offshore drilling here on the Sea Islands. So that had been going in our favor before all of this started, and we're praying that that continues to be the case. But then here comes this Bay Point destructionment that also came up right before the shutdowns, that we are against building on what is listed in Beaufort County as a natural preserve. It is an area that even during king tides, it floods. So why would you give someone a permit to build 50 units of exclusive buildings so that they literally will have to either fly people in or bring them over by some type of private yacht ferry service to go there to stay, to say they're doing ecotourism. Ecotourism doesn't require you to build permanent structures. And that's been our argument. This has been a fishing ground for generations for my people. I am also a founding member and the secretary of the Gullah Geechee Fishing Association. So it's critical to us that we be able to remain above ground with areas that are also places where we have a lot of fish, because we literally sustain ourselves still from fishing, and also where there are birds that are there. It's basically a bird sanctuary. And we also have our loggerhead turtles that nest there every year. These are things that have been tracked on this natural area over and over and over again. The Audubon has logged in on it. Numerous people, because of the thousands of other creatures that reside there all the time, much less the Gullah Geechee people that go out only to fish and leave. We don't go hang out and party over there. None of that we see people come who kayak and other things go out there and do. We don't harm that area in any way. And it's a barrier island. So again, going back to hurricanes, that island protects my island, St. Helena, that I live on. And this little sand spit, essentially, is what it is, sits between Hilton Head, which people worldwide know is a golfing area that displaced a bunch of Gullah Geechees to become that. And now Hilton Head would not annex that into Hilton Head. They didn't want it in terms of building on it. So we thought that when this got defeated many years back, that was the end of it. No, here it came again. So we're still having the battle legally. These guys are trying to push this thing through, even in the midst of COVID-19, when the county council building is not even open to the public for us to be in there to talk and see people face to face or anything. So we don't think it's correct. We don't think that that type of behavior should be tolerated. We think that there should be a moratorium against all these new projects in the midst of this, because citizens are not able to participate in the way that they should be if they're in opposition to it. So we have not only the GoFundMe, that is the Gullah Geechee Land Legacy Fund, and you'll know it's the right page because you'll see me. There's a video there with me explaining why we started this fund, why we need this fund, because it helps people pay land taxes in this COVID situation. We're trying to help the farmers get more seeds. We're trying to also get masks, because we found, and I just had a big conversation yesterday about it, we've talked to our DHEC partners, which is Department of Health and Environmental Control. They can't get us anything that we're asking for because everything's being diverted to the medical officials. And so where every year this time, the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition has community events that are fun, and we're outdoors and we get people there, we give our hurricane guides and we give our preparedness kits. We're isolated. So we're not able to do it in that manner. And every time we ask them, could they provide us with the materials so that we could at least put masks and hurricane guides and things together in preparedness kits for this year, they can't get the stuff to us. They don't have the resources. And so we're sitting here waiting between the flood of people still trying to push their way in to build things that shouldn't be built, and praying we don't have the active hurricane season that they say we're going to have in the midst of, as I mentioned, these thunderstorms and all this other stuff. So it really would help a great deal this year, because we normally raise money at our in-person events. We normally raise money by me traveling the world and speaking. That money all goes back to the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. I don't have a salary. So that helps us. But now, because we're halted, then we have to find other mechanisms like everybody else virtually to continue to ask people to contribute. And that's why I'm so happy that you wanted to open up what we're doing to the larger higher ground community, because we can use their support, and we hope that they would take this video and share it with other folks to also be able to contribute to why we have that fund on there that can get so lost amongst the millions of other fundraisers that are on GoFundMe. So we really appreciate it.
Wonderful. And we'll post a link again to it on the Facebook, down below.
Yeah, Facebook page. Would you also, Harriet, would you also repost our change.org petition that says stop the destruction men at Bay Point?
Okay.
Because a lot of people want to also help that way to sign as well. And so please have them do that. We have over 7,000 people that have joined us in trying to stop this. So we appreciate that too.
Fantastic. And so actually 2 points connected with that. One is, it sounds as though it doesn't matter where you are in the world, just sign that petition, correct?
Yes,
that you use
correct.
that to argue the scale of the public pushback against
Absolutely.
it. I have another one. So something that I deal with a lot when I'm working with higher ground members is my feeling of rage on their behalf. Of what they are facing. I mean, the Bay Point Resort is just so outrageous. How do you
It is.
manage that rage, or don't you? Or tell me a
I
bit
I
about that.
don't I don't because I'm not a rage person.
Ah,
Uh, I'm a person that's built differently. There may be something that I find annoying, or even to the point where something may anger me, but then I know to channel that. So it's like taking that and putting it into an engine, essentially. So it becomes sort of my own horsepower to say, well, instead of just dissipating the energy like a bomb, just blast out there, which is kind of the image I get when I think of rage. It's like, okay, let's turn this back internally and make it fuel something. Don't just blast out that energy we could use. Let's charge up something, and what can we do about it? And so that's how I guess one might say, to answer your question about managing it, I guess that's how I manage it, is always being a person that is active, proactive, not reactionary. And so being ahead of things and then already knowing, well, this craziness comes in, okay, let's push this over here because it can still take us further in this other direction, and not expend the energy and just dissipate it, but make it do something that, God willing, will leave the world a better place than it was when we came in. Now, because you mentioned rage, though, I want to mention this. There was a quote by James Baldwin that said to be black in America, or to be Negro in America, means to be enraged almost every day. And I recently reposted that because people may not realize, but Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered, who we're just now dealing with the arrest of the murderers, is a native Gullah Geechee.
no.
And he's from this coast here in Georgia. So yes, I'm surrounded by a lot of people right now who are enraged, and rightfully so, justifiably so, because it looks like there's this onslaught on us. We're going to build stuff that they don't want, which, messes up their quality of health. We're going to also kill the ones who we don't want there. COVID's killing them, so it seems like that. It seems like that effect right there. Like the minute someone tries to get air in their lungs, someone punches them in the chest. That's what it feels like. And so, but it's not a new feeling, unfortunately. But people of African descent in America. And that's the bad part. That's what I keep referencing as the flood. There's this constant flood, it seems like, of negativity. So you got to somehow find a balance in it. And I think that that's why loving outdoors helps a lot. Being able to just walk out there, walk on the same land that my ancestors had been previously enslaved on. Know that we own it. Know that we've kept it all these years. Walk into the field, touch the soil, and feel like I'm touching their hands. Start to sing and hear them singing with me, and feeling an energy that re-empowers, where I'm redirected and God says, well, yeah, with all of that, just do this. With all of that, stay focused this way. Don't let it turn you and start losing it. No, stay focused. And so I think that side of walking meditation is something that people could find helpful. Is find that place that you find beauty, that you find things that inspire you, and then keep on walking the higher ground. That's what I do.
And presumably you are a performance artist, you are passionate about preserving the culture of the Gullah Geechees. How does, presumably, cultural expression is also a part of finding peace. Is that correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. So first of all, I never call myself an artist. I've always called myself the artivist, because I think artists have a whole nother behavioral pattern that I don't have, in terms of just kind of staying focused on the one thing, is a key part. I don't kind of float a lot with things. I call myself the artivist because I do my activism through the arts. So whether that is poetry, whether that's dance, whether that's singing, I created an entire genre for what I do, which is called histomusical presentations. And that's what I do around the world. And God willing, in a few years, I'll go back and finish the rest of the world. I was trying to finish my 7 continents, Harriet. I finished all 50 states, and I was trying to finish my 7 continents when this came up. And so getting out there into the world and having other people the Yeti we and things like that, and the Yeti we songs and things like that. Like, some people have heard me online and in person, where since we're at high ground and we're talking about water, this came in my mind. Get away, Chile, Jordan. Get away, oh, Chile, Jordan. Get away, Chile, Jordan. I want for cross over for see my Lord. So we can't talk about cultural expression of Gullah Geechees without the spirituals. My ancestors created them. They've gone worldwide. They keep our spirit flowing like the tide. And so these are the things that I've been blessed for 40 years to have gone all over the place, presenting to audiences large and small, to Lili Chillin, to heads of state that come and visit me as a head of state. And so it's a blessing to also have that, as one might call it, an outlet, to be able to share the stories of my community, the painful ones and the powerful ones. And so it's really a wonderful thing. And so I'm looking forward to doing more of that live, but I've been asked by several people to do some virtual things. And so I've been enjoying that too, to some extent, because I'm also a computer scientist. So work with both sides of the brain.
Couldn't be more perfect. So just tell me, you were elected chieftess of the Gullah Geechee Nation. How did that come about? Tell me a little bit about your childhood and how you got to that situation. Such an honor.
First of all, I would say my childhood had nothing to do with it. The people who elected me would say, yes, it did. It had everything to do with it, because from a child, you were involved in pushing and fighting and holding onto the land and doing histo-musical presentations in Gullah when people were ashamed to speak Gullah, were ashamed to be called Gullah, were ashamed to be called Geechee. It is because of the work of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition that started in 1994 that any other organizations exist. We were the first organization in the world to exist with Gullah Geechee in the name. No other ones had that in their names until after we came, went online, started teaching classes online, started a listserv, all that, and started doing this. Well, one day, and this was when Net Noir was on America Online. And yes, I still have an America Online email address. So that tells you how long I've been doing this stuff. Right. I got an email from the International Human Rights Association for American Minorities, an NGO with consultative status with the United Nations, led by a native Gullah Geechee, the late Dr. Yusuf N. Clyde. He was alive at that time. They just said they wanted to talk to me because they saw the work I was doing for Gullah Geechees. And did I want to go to the United Nations with it? I was like, of course, why not? Not knowing that at the same time, there was someone who founded another organization called the Gullah Geechee People Foundation at that time, who is now Elder Carly Town, our Minister of Information for the Gullah Geechee Nation, who also had started in communication with Dr. Clyde, and they started learning about human rights law and what should be done. And so they ended up doing a petition called Who Speak For We. They asked me, would I be willing to lead the Gullah Geechee Nation, but it wasn't Gullah Geechee Nation, but Gullah Geechee people, in protecting who we are if there was an election. Because in order to be recognized as a nation, we had to have a land map that was recognizable. We had to have leadership. So how do you do that? So now, under the guidance of UN observers, they established a 1 year long election, not a 1 day, a 1 year long election. So the petitions were done in person, they were done online, all of this. So it took a 1 year process to elect me. Then we had an installment ceremony on July 2nd, 2000 on Sullivan's Island up in Charleston County, which is also the island where 40% of all Africans enslaved in North America came through. And that was intentionally chosen to show that this time we're coming there on our own. We're not coming there in bondage, and we're not coming there in chains. We're in fact coming to break the chains that have been on us, that have held back our rights. So we had thousands of people there. From across the world, media was there. The BBC, all these folks, the Vibe magazine. I am still meeting people who tell me I was at your installment. That installment was a sacred ceremony as a traditional ceremony to instill me as a spiritual leader, as a queen mother, but also as a confirmation of my political election and political position as a head of state. So I have two titles, I have two positions simultaneously, and I've never met another person in the world yet that has both, as a head of state and a queen mother. So a traditional leader and then a global leader. And so it has been a blessing because it's my third term as the head of state, and folks are not trying to impeach me, and they can. We have a constitution, we have rules and regulations. Our flag is up here behind me. So they said no. They appreciate the work I've done and that I'm doing, and so it's a blessing to have the faith of your community backing you whenever you go anywhere. And so definitely I send out love, peace, and blessings to all the native Gullah Geechee. Hana Chilla, know who Hana be. We be Gullah Geechee anointed people, and it's a blessing to be their leader.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I've just got, we'll go on a little bit because we got distracted during the middle. So we really have one or maybe two last questions. You and I met through an organization called the Climigration Network, which is an organization that networks, brings together people who are thinking about sea level rise and managed retreat. And that must be such a big issue for you. I've spoken to other groups. I spoke fairly recently with Hilton Kelly of Port Arthur, Texas, where there are issues of whether or not people should stay or go. And he very much described this as, plan A, we stay, and plan B, we might need to go. What's your thoughts on something that's so sort of scary to deliberate? You lose a culture as well as a home.
Right. Well, that's the thing. You can't displace Gullah Geechee culture and put it somewhere else. It will no longer be Gullah Geechee culture. We can move to any other city and we will then not be the Gullah Geechee nation. So one of the things that when I first met the folks that we evolved into being the Climigration Network, folks, I met them in Boston at a meeting, and I said to them then, I don't even know why I'm here, because we're not leaving, so, and I still held that position, but they still held on to me, saying we need that perspective, in terms of the work, because this is my position as a native Sea Islander. The islands we live on and the traditional way in which we build our homes is inland. We go to the highest point. We do not build directly on shorelines. So we are not the problem. So if anybody has to retreat, it ought to be those people who came here on retreat, but then decided, it's so pretty, it's paradise, I want to live here. Those folks who are flooding on a regular basis on a king tide, if anybody needs to leave, they leave first. When they leave, and they're permanently gone, and those properties around us are restored to natural preserves and things of that nature, and we're still thriving and surviving, then our plan Z will be retreat in terms of a mass removal of all native Gullah Geechee. We've been through too many hurricanes, too many floods, survived it, thrived here, been able to sustain ourselves until this overbuilding came. So there's no reason to talk to us first and tell us to leave, and you're not talking to the people who are steady trying to build in areas that flood just on a regular day, what they call sunny day flooding. So that conversation for us is a moot point at this point. Right. We have other ways that we need to continue to keep our culture alive, and it won't live if we take it away from where the roots are.
Right. And last question, around Higher Ground, you graciously agreed to join Higher Ground, really just, we'd only just been introduced, and not only join Higher Ground as an organization, but also become a council leader. What are your thoughts on Higher Ground? Could we do more on? Any observations? What's its use to you has been to you? And any final comments on that?
Well, let me say this, and once again, Harriet, everybody who knows me, you're getting to know me, but people who know me will tell you, oh no, she doesn't say anything she doesn't mean, and she will say what she means and stick to it. Okay, so when I say kudos to you, I honestly mean kudos to you, not just for the audience that's watching. The reason I do that is because I am on so many boards. It might take us another 30 minutes if I start listing them all, right? So I don't jump to get on anybody else's board. When you said what in your initial email, you said what higher ground is. I looked up what the Anthropocene Alliance was about, what this link was between the two, and it was all of what I do already. It was a natural fit. It was like a beautiful custom-made dress. Y'all who know me, y'all know I design clothes too. So yes, it was like a beautiful custom-made dress. It was a perfect fit. That was the first reason why I joined. Since I've joined, and it's not like you can't resign from boards. I've had one, I think, in my lifetime I went on resign from because they totally went off track. They weren't doing what our mission was. They weren't leading, they were being led. And what I love about this group is it is the voices of the people who are actually in the situation that's leading the group. It's actually the people who are in the communities that are flooding that are leading the group. That you always ask us, what else can we do? And definitely, how can we help you? And your help comes in a form of resourcing, not just, well, I'll send out an email or, well, I'll retweet your tweet. No, you actually physically go out there, as some people call it, into the weeds, looking for ways to connect us to each other, but connect us to resources. Those might be financial, those might be intellectual, those might be scientists, those might be attorneys, whatever is needed to really get us to higher ground. And I appreciate that, and I respect that. And I respect the fact that there's not lip service given to this needing to be a multicultural group. That term doesn't even come up because we are that. We are the rainbow of people that are dealing with these issues all over America. And I love that because we get to hear the different voices, looking at different faces, but seeing how alike we are. And that is beautiful. And so for me, whenever I hear the term higher ground, I think of Stevie Wonder, number one. But also, but I also constantly think elevation. And that's what I feel being part of Higher Ground Council. And I talk about y'all a lot. I wear my I flood so I vote t-shirt out in my field that I talked about a lot. I missed taking a photo of it when the field flooded. I meant to take a shirt. I meant to go out there with the shirt on to get someone to take a picture, but we were so busy trying to deal with the other stuff, we didn't get to get that picture. God forbid it floods again, but if it does, I'll do it. But I said, well, I'll Photoshop my other t-shirt pictures in there. But that is something that I think is a blessing of this organization, is the collective consciousness about moving on these issues and moving together. And what I hope that we can do better or get more focus on, even in the midst of people still, some open and some not, so-called, with the stay-at-home orders, is more of a focus on the issue of fill and build. I think that is a critical issue.
You will have many people on this who will be listening, who will be cheering you for you saying that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really think that is a critical issue. I think the way in which it has been couched by our organization as a threat needs to be pushed. People need to get behind us and get with us on stopping this thing that destructionaires come into our towns and areas that are marshland, areas that are riverfronts, areas that are low-lying, that they can fill it in, and doesn't matter who's downstream that gets flooded out. And generally, those are the native people. Those are the indigenous people. Those are the people who don't have deep pockets. And we look all different ways, and we crack our teeth all kind of with different ways and things like that. So we speak all different languages and everything, but the same languages, that needs to be stopped. And so I definitely appreciate this being an issue that we have at the foreground of our work. And I'm looking forward to a flood of support for it, and pushing it. I mention it as often as I can in regard to the whole Bay Point issue, because that's exactly what that project would be. Right. Even though they're trying to couch it as eco-tourism, you can't build those kind of buildings there without filling and building. And so we need to attack it for what it is. Don't let others give us flowery language and turn our heads. Like I say, stay focused, and stay on point, and let's all get the higher ground together. So I appreciate the work we're doing, and just am ready for us to get out here and get together and do even more of it to heal the land and keep people's communities safe from all this flooding.
Queen Quet, thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for joining the call and for your inspiration. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Harriet. And I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody and all the Facebook folks that are out there. If you wonder where I am on Facebook, you can find Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook and follow our fan page and keep up with what is going on and things like that. And definitely, please, if you can, not only contribute at the GoFundMe Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund, but also please tweet it, repost it, share it. And if folks don't want to give online, just send us an inbox message and we'll tell you how you can send in a check, because a lot of people say, yeah, I want to donate, but I don't like to put my credit card and things online. So definitely just send us that message or email us at the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. You can go to gullahgeechee.net, GullahGeechee.net, GullahGeechee.net. We cast nets to fish, so we do that to draw you in. All right, so GullahGeechee.net. You can email us from there. Our mailing address is up there as well, and the donations we really appreciate. But even more than that, I'm looking forward to getting back out here into the world and hopefully getting to some of your communities with you so that we can have dialogues, discussions, and things like that, and celebrate and get some shouting wine on, right? And maybe even sing about higher ground sometime. We're going to get Harriet. I'm going to see if she got a voice like mine or not. All right. No. You leave it to me. You leave me doing that, Harriet. Is that what you're telling me? But yes. Definitely peace and many blessings to you and all of the other council leaders and all the members of Higher Ground and the Anthropocene Alliance. I pray that everybody is healthy and that you stay that way and we all get the higher ground together.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Peace and blessings.